Heyo, what's up everyone? It's me again, Ren. I just wanted to talk about some of the VFX that went into our 100-hour film festival. The 100-hour film race video. We called it Rift. I thought about calling it Edge. Something broken. Rift. It's gotten pretty good reception. A lot of people liked it. Some people didn't like it so much. What I say to you is, I'd like to see you try to make a video like that in 100 hours. Yeah, that's right, because from brainstorming to finished product, that video was done in 100 hours. I did not sleep very much. Before I go into the breakdowns, I just want to say go over and subscribe to Epium. They directed the video. They were the eyes behind the vision. They're pretty cool, so I'd recommend go checking out the channel down below. This video is not going to have any direct tutorials, but I'm going to go through my project files for you so you can see what I did, why I chose to do some of the things I did, and just kind of, see what's all put together. I do that a lot. I don't know why. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, here's the hologram I created from scratch. The first thing I did was create a light blue solid, and then I made a rounded edge rectangular mask to the size that I wanted. I duplicated that mask and then set it to subtract, and then feathered it out to give it some substance. I duplicated the solid itself and then undid the feathering to make a fine outline for the graphic. By doing this, you can change all the mask properties while still starting from a similar template. For instance, I removed the subtraction mask on a layer and then applied the grid effect and then faded that layer out. I animated the grid to move from left to right over a long period of time, and then when I created an adjustment layer, I added the CC glass effect. And then I proceeded to, mess with the light and surface settings until I got something that actually looked kind of bad. It was all jagged and cut up and it looked stupid. But that's okay, because when I pre-comped this into the background, I applied another CC glass effect on an adjustment layer. And so then I was able to mess with the settings to make it look more rounded and nice, essentially. I liked what I ended up with because it made it look more graphical and static-y while still having a seemingly smooth and glass-like feel to it. For the icons, I literally just did a Google image search, and then I grabbed the large res ones with a white background so that I could invert it and make the background be black. By tinting it blue and then setting the transfer mode to add made it seem like they belonged in the shot. For the video frame, I made another rectangular mask on a solid and used that same mask on the video footage itself that I brought in of my cousin Arthur here acting as the police captain. I used the mosaic effect on the footage and then animated it from being really pixelated to almost no pixelation at all in about a second or so, and then faded that shot to another shot. I mean, it's the same shot, but this one doesn't have the filter on it so that it doesn't have to render the effect in the background when it wasn't needed. For the way the hologram boots up, I crushed the vertical scale on the background until it was merely a strip, and then I animated a mask to reveal it on the sides. And that's when I keyframed the scale back to normal. I rendered out the background, video frame, and video footage all separately by soloing each part respectively. That way, each had the same dimension, and I could easily line it up in 3D space. Okay, so here's the original shot of the detective getting out of bed without any effects placed over it and before the tracking. Now what I did was I created a white solid and then animated a mask so that anything moving within the scene is covered, which happens to be Micah here. Using the Foundry's camera tracker, I tracked the scene so that I could create a digital camera inside of After Effects. The tails you see trailing behind the points are where they were in previous frames. You generally don't want red tracks because that means it has a low confidence level, but in this case, it's good enough, and it honestly wasn't that bad. The match mover calculates position, orientation, and movement from all the different points you see on the screen, and this is exactly how CG elements like monsters and transformers are composited into real footage in the movies. Once I tracked my scene, I placed a solid in the area that I wanted to put the hologram in to test it. It was tracked pretty well, so I ended up just using the location information from a null object that was basically attached to the typewriter to align the hologram's position in 3D space in relation to the digital camera. Then I changed the orientation and scale of it to fit my liking. From here, it was easy enough to add the video frame and the video footage in the same position as the background because it had the same dimensions, and then I just pushed it out forward a little bit. My purpose for doing this was to really show how it fit in the scene in 3D space, but also just because I thought it looked awesome. I also tracked some faded blue solids I aligned over the surface of the typewriter to create the effect of a hologram projecting a soft glow. These also moved in 3D space properly. Alright, for the fight scene, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the glide shot first. What took a lot of time on this shot was replacing the background to make the shot more appropriate for the 50s era, even though it's all kind of cyberpunk. For that, what I did was take a photo from approximately the same angle of some of the trains that were actually right behind the camera, and you could actually see them in the shot right before this. I positioned the photo so that it looked right in the scene, and then placed some clouds above it and blended them together to get a nice background that covered everything. The next step was to bring the foreground back in, and the easiest way to do that was just to make a mask and mask around the buildings. And now that the background was replaced, I used the curves adjustment to make the colors match between the buildings and the background. Once that was finished, it was okay to mask back in the female fighter, which was by far the most stressful effect of the whole video, mainly because I had to go and frame by frame cut her back in. Thank God for the rotobrush. What made it difficult was the fact that her hair was flying around, and that's really hard to, crop out, so I left it fairly rough. Fortunately, once it's in black and white and made to look more like nighttime, it was more difficult to notice. Now that I finally have a plate to work on, it's time to add the fun effects like the fire and the lightning. You actually may recognize the fireball and the flamethrower from my elemental combat video, and that's because they're the same files. On the flame, after about a second, I animated a mask from the start of the fire to the end to make it look like it got cut off, and then tinted it blue and vertically flipped it so that it appeared to have somewhat of a core to it. I animated the twirl effect to create the look of the male fighter absorbing the fire as it's being shot at him. By setting the transfer mode of a blue solid to add and the opacity of it down to around 40 or so, you can actually create a cool glow by masking the area of the ground affected and feathering it out. I added electricity to both fighters using the standard advanced lightning effect, and animated the start and end positions and added a mask to make it look like it was striking the ground. I also added some sparks from the Action Essentials pack from Video Copilot to spice up the shot a little. Spicy. For the final shootout, I used another lightning effect and had it meet in the middle. Pretty easy, but I also piled on 4 different firecracker shots from the Action Essentials pack as well, and looped them over and over again until the end of the shot. And here's the final effect without the color correction. I'm showing it because I thought it looked cool. Yeah. There's not much to say about the first approaching shot. I replaced the sky in the background and tracked it horribly to the scene. You can see it shifting around if you look closely. And then there's standard lightning and some welding sparks from the Action Essentials pack. For the glide shot, I also added in some more welding sparks to the lightning lock at the end of it to make it a little bit more intense. And that's when there's a crash zoom in on the detective just before he turns around. From that same location as the glide track, we also shot a really zoomed in video on a telephoto lens and then scaled it down to fit the shot and put the opacity of it to 0. By linking the scale of the 2 videos and then enlarging one really quickly as the telephoto shot fades in, creates the zoom. Add in some motion blur and you create the feeling that you just crashed into him as he swings around. For the flying away effect, I did another sky replacement first. Now there's some great tutorials out there for the exact method I used, but I basically just tracked position and rotation on the wall and then added in some clouds in the back. I wanted some more moonlight in the clouds, so I set the transfer mode of this one photo to add and laid it on top of the main clouds to create a pretty cool effect. With some color correction and curve adjustments, along with a matte choker, the sky replacement was done and ready for the fun effects to begin. I shot the girl who flies away on a green screen leaning over a box so that I can kind of get the right angle for her flying away, and using Primac here to get rid of the green and a mask to get rid of the box, I isolated her so that I could animate it in the shot. For that, I made it a 3D layer and positioned her at a normal scale to be as if she's standing on the ground. Then I keyframed her position and orientation to where she disappears in the sky, and then pushed her way back in Z space, about 20,000 pixels away. This takes care of the proper animation of scale for us because it's not linear. At first she shrinks really quickly, but the rate of shrinking slows down the further away she gets. If you see my Falcon Punch video, I use the exact same method for when I get punched into the wall in the distance. After cutting the clip to make her disappear, then I added some ink drops from the Riot Gear pack, also from Video Copilot. If you search for ink drops on YouTube though, you can probably find some good substitutes. Couple that with a bright blue optical flare, animated to go from really bright and large to dim and small, and you have the effect of her flying away. Be sure to have the ink drop that shoots outward be the exact opposite direction of the flight to emphasize some sort of recoil in the clouds. It's what sells the effect in my opinion. Pretty much the last effect in this video was changing the color of the detective's eyes to orange. And this is the same exact shot as the first video clip at the beginning of the film. Also, if you notice right before it cuts to black after the male fighter grabs the detective, his eyes are also glowing orange. Just something we threw in there which may have possibly been a little too subtle. And it was purposely left open-ended, but right, back to the effect, which is actually very, very simple. After he sits up, I tracked each eye pupil separately and then linked an orange solid to each. On both orange solids, I used some masks to make it cover just the iris of the eye. Set the transfer mode to add and the opacity down to about 40% to not overdo it, and you're good. See, if you overdo it and put it up to 100%, it just looks stupid. Yeah, keep it at 40. So hopefully you learned something from all this. And I promise I still will eventually make a behind the scenes / breakdown for the Falcon Punch video. But, until then, hey, enjoy your day.